Perfect. All right, everybody can hear me? We're good? All right, you good back there? So today, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Steve Doyle. I am a recovering engineer. I'm a metallurgical engineer by degree. I did it for 20 years. It was great. I traveled the world, traveled the globe, had many team members that reported to me. Where I got the most satisfaction was when I developed other leaders. I developed my peers. I created mentoring and coaching programs for women in engineering. Then that translated into the dudes going, why not us? What it all came down to, though, was how do we set the priorities for a leader in an organization? Because us, when we were individual contributors, we always kind of did what we were told. Those of us that push back, they're like, oh, you might have some leadership capabilities. You continue to develop others. But when it gets down to it, when we're talking prioritization for leaders, we're not just talking how do we develop people, it's how do we develop our organization? How do we help our business grow, our company grow? And that's what the prioritized leader is. So today what we want to talk about is the framework for the prioritized leader, but then it's really more of a workshop. It's really aimed at the 5 areas of a prioritized leader and a deep dive into 2 of those critical areas. So when we talk prioritized leader, there is a beginning, there's an end. There's a baseline. Where are we today? Where do we want to go? And how are we going to get there? And there's 5 areas, but today we're going to keep it simple. We're going to talk just about the 5 main areas and then get into our workshop. The whole purpose for the prioritized leader comes from the Deloitte & study where they found and they surveyed and found that 86% of business leaders all agree that the success of their business hinges on their rising leaders. Okay, that's nice. But of those leaders, only 13% believed that those rising leaders were capable. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not, that they didn't have faith in the leaders. They didn't have faith and confidence in the process and the systems their businesses had in place to develop those leaders. And when we get down to the real problem of that, the real problem is the blind spots. I think when we're driving, there's all kinds of blind spots. There's always something coming at us. But when we prioritize things in our business, we may be prioritizing things incorrectly. We may be prioritizing people. We may be prioritizing profits over people, over purpose. We may be just ground and pound. Well, if we don't have our priorities in the right spot, those blind spots that we see, that we don't see, have a profound impact on us in our organization and the success of our business. So when we talk the prioritized leader, it's broken down into 5 areas. You have purpose, which is our why. But it's not just our why. It can translate, it is very clear, paints a picture. And it really starts to talk about how we do what we do. Why are we doing what we are doing and how we are doing it? Then our people. Our people are our most valuable asset. But if we don't encourage them, we don't practice the empathy with them, the rest of it, the pace at which we do things, how fast we do things, the perception, how do people perceive us, how do we innovate, how can we be creative, we're not going to do any of that, and ultimately we're not going to have the funds to be in business. So that's why we provide a very clear framework on what it is. Now there is an optimal order. And when, obviously we have an assessment, if you take the assessment, you might see, hey, where am I versus the optimal order? You may find things that are out of order. It just may be that you're focused on different things. But this optimal order, purpose first, then your people, those are your top 2 things. They're why you do what you do and the people that are engaged to do it. Without those, the rest of the 3, your pace, your perception, and your profit, aren't going to come along. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about the 5 areas, and then we're going to do, the majority of it is going to be our workshop. And the workshop is meant really as an individual, but if you're here with a bigger company, this is where it gets fun, okay? So when we talk purpose, and there's a lot on purpose. Like you've got Simon Maxwell, know your why. But it's not just about knowing your why. It's truly getting to the point where you can paint the picture that it becomes so visual of what your purpose is that people can see it, they can relate to it. And when people can relate to it, people can buy into it. And when people can buy into it, you have momentum. But without purpose, without knowing why you're doing what you're doing, and this is from a business, this is also from a person perspective, individual perspective. If you don't buy into it, you're checking out. And one of the things we learned yesterday when Chris was talking about culture, you're either all in or you need to go. Because if you're not all in, you're the bad apple. You're the toxic fruit in your organization. And as we just learned from Brandon, if we don't understand why we want to do this, if we're not committed to being the best, check out, because this business, when you clearly understand the purpose of the business, it aligns with your purpose, you as an individual have greater momentum to succeed in your personal life and in your organization. You can realize greater potential. And if you can't, it's time to move on. Now, I spent 20 years in commercial automotive. I rose up, was an executive in engineering. Guess what happened? The company went one way, and I had to make a decision. Do I believe in where they're headed? Do I believe they care about me? Do I have all of these things that they're looking for? Short answer was, I believed in this more than that. We have to make decisions. You just have to know, are we willing to commit and make that decision? But that's really what purpose, when we start digging down into what purpose really is, and there's actually going to be an exercise in it in a moment, when we start digging down into that, it's the self-reflection. Do we understand, when we talk purpose, do we understand the vision? Where do we want to go? Can we paint a picture with a movie so clear that any one of us can clearly see this is what our vision is? And likewise, we all have values. And a lot of our values at the companies that we're with, they may align. But when the values start to delineate and you start to go one way and the business starts to go another, guess what happens? What do you think happens? Anyone? When your values are not aligned, you get disengaged. Yeah, go for it. What? Productivity tanks. What else? Demoralization. What else? You're disengaged. Guess what else happens? Does bad fruit rot only by itself when it's together with others? Now you have a team. Now you have, let's say you're disengaged. Somebody else on your team starts talking to you. They become disengaged. The momentum grows. Toxicity grows. Disengagement grows. Dysfunction grows. Why? Because we're not aligned. And that's really what it means to be purpose. In this purpose first, there's an alignment. We understand our vision. We understand our values. But we all agree this is where we're moving. So next is people. It's second on our list. Why is it second? Because we need to engage people to do the things we want them to do. And when I say we want them to do, the people want to do it. It's not you're asking, you're not demanding. They're buying in because they believe in the purpose. They believe in the vision. They believe in the values. Why do they believe in it? Because it's part of their vision and their values. But when they feel engaged, when people feel heard, we're going to talk a little bit about empathy. When people feel heard, they feel listened to, they feel more engaged. And I know I talked to some of you yesterday and you talked about the company you're currently at and why it's so great. It's because you felt heard. You felt like you could have a conversation. You could turn to somebody else. That's an organization that people want to be at. But if you ask yourself, am I in that organization today? You may answer no. And that's okay. But we all have a choice. We can choose to decide to continue on and turn it around for ourselves. Because honestly, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. but we can make the grass green where we are standing right now. But if we can encourage and invite our people, foster the creativity in them, purpose and people will start to take your business and skyrocket it. Now, when we talk pace, what do you guys think pace is? Nobody? Everybody? Sustained speed? Interesting. I like it. What else? Pace in business, sometimes you're at full throttle, full tilt. Everybody's engaged. But we know when you're full throttle, full tilt, you burn out. So how do we keep the burnout from happening? We keep high level of engagement. We keep momentum going. But we have to understand, when do we accelerate? When do we decelerate? When do we pause? And when do we regroup? That's what pace is in a business. It's all of that. It's dynamic. We have to be able to adjust. I'm going to use the word very loosely compared to how this conference is using it, but we have to be agile. We have to be nimble. We can't always go full throttle. Now, when we talk perception, I always love this, because perception isn't just how do people perceive us. Perception in the prioritized leader is being that 5-year-old superhero with the immense creativity that we lose as adults. But imagine yourself as this 5-year-old child right now. Imagine yourself back when you were 5, the creativity you had. Nobody told you couldn't do it. Nobody told you things were impossible. They were telling you things are possible if you believe. And that's what the perception part is. So how can we live our purpose, encourage our people at a pace that they don't burn out, foster creativity and innovation, and if we do those 4 things, profit happens. Now, the thing with profit, and most people might wonder, why is profit last? For the reason I just explained. If you're not living your purpose, if you're not living your vision, your values, if your people are not engaged, if you're not accelerating at a pace that's acceptable to your people, to your clients, and also with the perception that you have with the innovation and the growth and the courage that you have, you can be a VC and dump a bunch of money in, but it's going to go out real quick. And profit isn't just about managing your finances, right? There's going to be things that you have to make a decision on. Are we going to spend money here or are we not? Are we going to have to move people around? Are we going to have to lay people off? But if we don't have all those 4 prior things, profit doesn't matter. Any questions on those 5 areas? And we try to keep it simple on those 5 areas in business. And I welcome anybody to challenge me on it. And if there's no questions, what I'd like you to do now is we're going to get into the workshop section. So everybody at your table, you should have a handout. If you don't have one, you two don't have one. Do you guys mind chucking a couple pens and anybody mind chucking some pens and Great. All right. So in this workbook, what we're going to do now is we're going to do some pre-work. We're going to talk about focus first. Focus for ourselves, focus for our business. Now, when we talk focus for ourselves, we're going to first start with our 3 to 5 top priorities. What are your 3 to 5 priorities? Maybe you only have one, and that's totally cool. But on this paper, write 1 to 5, whatever your priorities are. Take a minute and write that down. Yes?
Do you want our focus personally, our focus as a business?
Great clarifying question. What matters to you right now? It can be personal. On this first page, it can be personal or your team. So if you're with your team, if you're with your team and you want to make it on business, make it, what is your business? If you're here by yourself, what do you want to get out? What is your point for here? Like, what is your goal for here? What is your priority in your business? All right. If you've got one thing down, you're ahead of the game. What I want you to do now is look at the next one, the internal message. What is getting in your head right now? What is stealing your clarity from achieving one of those areas of focus? Just pick one thing. You can write down more. Challenge is one. Then move on to the next one. What are external noises that are getting in the way? What are you hearing that can steal that amount of time between 30 minutes or 3 hours? What are those external noises? And then last, what are those loud interruptions? What are those 3 things that always happen that you count on? You're like, all right, I'm going to go to the office and answer 100 emails. Then I'm going to get a cup of coffee. I'm going to join the gossip at the coffee pot. If you're in person, if you're virtual, then you're going to have 400 Zoom meetings in a day, and it's going to be great. Now, the whole reason for having you do this is just to start to see the flavor of what is coming. What is getting in your way from achieving the goals? What are those, and I'm going to call them superficial things. Why do I call them superficial? Because we're allowing certain things to come into our lives to impact what it is we want to do. Once we can start to clearly identify where they are, we can move them to the side. And if we can move them to the side, we can have clear focus on what it is we want to do. So, with purpose, and we're going to focus on purpose and people now. So with purpose, when we talk purpose, paints a picture. It's very, very clear. It's got to be visual, or you've got to have the vision to see it. And then you have the values. The values are why, how we are doing what we're doing. The vision, it clearly embraces the heart, embraces the head, and it embraces your imagination. So hopefully this video will play. And I want you to take a few minutes. I want you to look at the video, and we're going to have some questions around that when it plays.
Well, it's been hard with Dad these days, and so I was thinking maybe...
Your mom's car.
Oh, you know, she taught me to drive in that car.
You up for a little night work?
you know.
It's the best Christmas gift I could ever have. You ready?
I'm ready.
Uncle, you ready?
Very successful campaign ad by Chevrolet. Not once did they mention it was Chevrolet until the end. What did you gather from that video? Anyone? Think of others. Love. Unconditional love. Product placement. I like that. Interesting. Where do you see the vision of the company in there? Family. What else? Nostalgia. Anything else? Thinking of others.
Loyalty.
Loyalty. Bonding. It's a good car if it runs for that long. Anything else on vision that you see in that video?
It's more than just a car.
It's more than just a car. GM is more than just a car. That's what they're trying to translate to you in this video. In their vision, it's more than just the physical car. What about values? What did you see and hear about values?
Family, community.
Family, community. Care, yeah, empathy. Giving. Anything else? Teamwork. But none of what was that? Community. Price didn't matter. Do you understand what their purpose is through that video? In that video, what their vision is, what their values are, can you start to paint that picture of their purpose? And really start to understand, it's more than just a car. We're about family, community, teamwork, understanding, and we're in it for the long haul. This isn't short term. But people made memories, and those memories are still alive. So they're leaving a legacy. 4-minute video. Ran in, I think this was a few years ago when they ran this. Very successful campaign for them. But it clearly shows what their vision, what their values are as an organization. And it's about the people. The car is along for the ride. So, keeping that mindset, in your workbooks, your worksheets, on page 3, what we have in a moment, actually on page 3, so these are organizational reflections. So after seeing that video, can you write out what your organization's vision statement is? Can you clearly write it out? It's okay if you can't. It's totally okay. Now, if you've got that done, can you write out your organization's value statement? And this is very clear. This is the organization. This is the company you work for. If you can't, that's okay. If it's only a few words of what you can remember, that's okay. So if you've got that done, let's jump down to the bottom half of the page. The first question is, how well do you think your coworkers can articulate these statements? This is, again, just for you. We're not going to share in here. It's okay, unless you really, really want to. And then the last question, how well do you think the organization lives out these vision and values? The reason for asking you these questions is more, it really starts to tell you and show you, am I engaged in the organization? Am I truly engaged to being in the organization, living with purpose? Am I buying in? Do I believe in their vision? Do I believe in their values? So on the next page, it's the personal reflection statement. This is about you. Do you have your own vision statement? Is your vision statement clear? Can you paint a picture? Can you create a video like GM did that clearly shows what your vision is? Can you clearly articulate it? If not, that's okay. Because this is the start of the journey. Now, for those that have done the vision statement, what are your values? What are your personal values? Write down 1 to 3 values that you personally have. And then if you've done that, at the bottom, why do you work where you do? How well do your vision and values align with the company or the organization that you're with? How many found that easy? How many found that difficult? Now, for those that found it easy, why did you find it easy?
I've done it for myself and I do it for others.
You've done it for yourself, you do it for others.
When you live the values, they're easier to articulate.
Right. When you live the values, they're easier to articulate. Now, for those that found this to be awkward, not fun, a little difficult, what did you sense was some of the difficulty in doing that? If you care to share. No? Go for it.
I found it a little easy, but I find it difficult to be on something that they realize they can
Right? And at that point, we have a crossroads. We can either choose to align or set a different path. Sometimes the greatest fruit is in aligning, because that's where some of our greatest growth is, because it's a challenge. And that's what it comes down to. It's really challenging us to live with high vision and high values. And so we have on your next page, I already have this on your next page to look at. And when we're working with companies on this, we group them when we're talking, and this is the currency for purpose. The currency is values, the currency is vision. So we're going to start in the upper left. We're going to talk about status quo, where we have high values, we have low vision. What does that mean? We have integrity. Our business, we do what we say we're going to do. But because we have low vision, we don't have a great entrepreneurial spirit. So where do we think of these businesses? These are our small mom and pop shops, our local businesses. They may do great in their local market, but they lack the innovation, they lack the courage, they lack the vision to expand and grow. Now, if we move down into the lower left, we have declining. Low values, low vision. Extremely toxic environment, no trust, no teamwork. This is a company that's going out of business. Now, if we move over into the turbulent side, low values, high vision. So when we talk that, we're talking very powerful teams. They get a lot of stuff done. They have a lot of innovative product. Unfortunately, what they do versus what they say are completely opposite. So your trust in that company, in that business, in that organization is misplaced. A lot of things going on, but people doing, saying things. And yes, we probably have all experienced that type of organization. Then we move up into the purposeful area. High vision, high values, where everybody is living out the vision and the values. But it's not just living, it's believing in each other, it's believing in what the organization is doing. Unconditional belief in the values and in the vision. Everybody's on board at every point in time. Is that hard to do? Yes. Is it hard to sustain? Yes. Do we have clients that move back and forth? Yes. As long as we're talking about it, as long as we're moving, we know we set the goal, we know where we want to go, we can get there. But we may experience any one of these categories along the journey. So on the next page, page 7, taking all of that and what you saw in the video, how clear and compelling are your organization's vision and values? How well does your organization paint a picture for the future? And you can write not at all. You can write somewhat. You can actually, if you can clearly articulate it, write it out. So for those that wrote it out, or got it partially wrote out, where they believe their organization gives a compelling future, anybody care to share? Go for it.
Sort of headwinds.
Headwinds? Correct. Mm-hmm. All right. Anyone else? No? Yeah.
I just put I think our company does a pretty good job at this, actually.
In what ways? In what ways?
They constantly, like in our quarterlies or, all hands on meetings, whatever, talk about, the good things we've done and then like what that's enabling us to do in the future, like what we want to accomplish in the future, how we're going to get there. So, like especially, I don't have a ton of experience other companies, but the company I was coming from, it's like the opposite, basically.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Anyone else? Go, Steve. Yes.
So, our vision, I don't know if this is the official vision, but we're piloting a truck, truck stops at the gas station. I wrote down, I don't know what our official vision is, but our vision is a world where truck drivers who are always parked are never isolated and are alone. And that I think that the way they convey that vision is everything, every piece of documentation or every, not documentation, sometimes not supposed to go down a wrong page, but every piece of material has a picture of our facility with the truck driver, not ours, and that trucker who we want to support right there on his own.
Mm-hmm.
Even the customer, is the way to say it.
Yeah, so they have the customer as number one. They're constantly putting it out in their documents, focus on our customer, essentially. Cool. Anybody else? Down the front? You good? Yeah? Did you raise your hand? All right, go.
As an organization, we do great, I think, but as a department that try to decide that organization, not so much. Like we lost the value somewhere.
So within the departments, each department has their own isolation versus the company? Okay. Definitely see that. And you see that in organizations. You are going to see that coming from where I came from, yes. There's multiple divisions, there's multiple organizations within those divisions. You might have same departments, you might have multiple purchasing, multiple sales, multiple engineering departments, and they all operate differently. They all have a different purpose, they all have a different vision. And at the top, the company has its own vision, its own values, its own purpose. So within an organization, this is one of the tools that we use to help fight those little micro-organizations to truly align. How do we move forward as an overall team? It's easy to say, it's work to do. So with that, the next question is, how well does my employer inspire its employees for its customers? Anybody want to share? How does your company inspire its employees for its customers? Go for it.
We always talk about main vision, which is like helping the members.
Okay, yeah.
That is usually there by everybody is moving, by moving, this is to help the members. So it's like kind of making it every single day that just is not brain.
Awesome. So it's continuously hitting home every conversation you have about how to inspire your customers. That's awesome. I can tell you that does not happen everywhere. Anybody else? Yeah. They work for social good? In what ways?
Like they raise awareness about like social justice issues and actively like get towards that as well, work towards that.
Awesome. So they're following through on what they're saying they're going to do. Perfect. Again, doesn't happen everywhere. So the next question, as we're going around this, is how well does my organization's vision and its values, how does it help solve society's problem? Or a problem that society has? Yeah.
He does community development, and also we have drives to like get to the food bank.
Yeah. That's awesome. Now, do you have like employees going there to help serve? Do any of the people that you serve actually, are they employees?
People that we serve?
Yeah.
Not that I know of.
Okay. Right. Something always to ask. If we're always going out to serve, how are we truly helping others in society? Do we have places for them in our organization? Something to think about. Then last thing, since we have been spending a little bit of time reflecting, is to continue to reflect a little bit on the vision and values matrix that we have outlined here on the board, on the paper. Where do you think your organization is? And if it's not in a place where you want it to be, what can you contribute to be the catalyst of change? Cool, everybody done? So on the next side, we've talked a lot about your organization. The last question is the prompt for this page. So when we're on page 8, the last question we just asked is, what can I do to be the catalyst to change? Well, now it's the personal reflection. It's the personal reflection on, does my personal vision statement paint a picture of the future for me? If so, how? So take a few minutes to write that out. And then how does my vision inspire my coworkers? How does it inspire my family? And then I'm going to skip a question here. Where in this matrix are you? And if we are not where you want to be, let this be the moment you decide. Do I want to be here, or do I want to change? All right. Moving on to people. Well, let's pause. Any questions on purpose? Clear as mud? Frustrating? Found some things you don't like? Found some things you like? All of those? That's the point. It's the point of the self-reflection. It's the point of we need to understand, we need to measure, we need to gauge where we currently are, where do we want to go. Because if we're not continuously doing that, we're just on a hamster wheel, spinning. So when we talk people, we want to attract people to the organization that fit our purpose. They live and breathe our vision and our values. But one of the other things with people, because people are our most important asset, we want to inspire them. We want to challenge them. We want them to innovate. We want them to be creative. But if we don't foster an inclusive environment where we can have the frank conversations to challenge them, to be respectful of them, respectful of their difference of opinions, we ultimately are going to fail with our people. We're going to create a toxic environment. And ultimately, we'll fail. But there are ways that we can succeed and we can move forward. So I want to share with you another video. Hopefully this one plays all the time.
Hey, think of all that we could do if we started with me and you. And I'll keep coming back around. Hey, some things will never be explained. Summer's calling out 1,000 things, and I keep coming back around. I'll keep coming back around. Outside the summer's calling. These are the days when I would care. And when the night is falling, these are moments meant to share. So wait a while and then you'll see. It all started with you and me. Oh, wait and you'll see. I'll keep coming back around. I'll keep coming back around. I'll keep coming back around.
People. Innovation, challenge. It's a currency. Coca-Cola ran this campaign. Their sales with a certain generation, certain age group, skyrocketed. Why is that? Personalization? Personal? Yep. Why else? What was that? Bring people together. Care. Friendship. Fun. What was that? Creative. No one gets left behind. In an organization that has all of those characteristics, what do you think happens? Are people engaged? Are they more productive? That's the challenge that we have as leaders, to challenge and to innovate with our people, to allow the creativity, to foster that creativity, to be able to do that. So we have those two currencies, innovation and challenge. The more we can have open, honest conversations to challenge each other to be better, the stronger we are, the more innovative we are. But if we don't have the culture in the organization where we can actually have critical conversations, crucial conversations, navigational conversations when things don't go well, and we can't learn from those mistakes, Do you think people want to be engaged? Do you think people want to speak up? Be a part of that? This whole commercial with Coke, right, wasn't, I mean, yes, you have product placement, you have Coke, but it's about challenging each other to share time with each other. It's about being innovative in how they're doing it, inviting people in. And imagine a culture, imagine a work environment where that was the norm. How would that make you feel? Anyone? Feel like crap? Or feel the opposite? Probably feel elated if that was the culture. Oh, this isn't working. But that is. So, we want to take a look at the currency now for people, which is high invitation, high challenge. So when we talk through this, high invitation, we have our cozy environment. Cozy environment is everybody's friendly. Everybody gets along, low challenge. We're not productive at all. We just kind of go about doing our thing, but we have a lot of fun. So we're in the cozy environment. Dropping down to the boring environment. There's no challenge, no empathy, nobody gives a crap about each other. I would say it's boring, you're falling apart. Really, you're starting, and I might change that word to toxic instead of boring. And why wouldn't I use toxic over on the lower right where we're stressful? Well, we have low invitation, invitation, inviting people in, but we're constantly challenging each other. We don't celebrate wins, we don't celebrate losses, we just keep moving on. It's the drum that keeps beating. We have goals, we have to hit the outcome. Next year we have goals, we have to hit the outcome. So on and so forth. It's just repeat. Constantly stressing people out, and people are leaving. Then we move up to empowered, where we have high invitation, high challenge. It is where we have the most, if you want to use diverse organization, that's fine. But we have the most, where the organization itself has broadened the invitation to those that have difference of opinions, different cultures, different upbringings. Why? Because we challenge each other differently. And with that high challenge, everybody has different experiences. And with those different experiences, and if we're truly embraced in those, we can empower each other. And so those organizations that are highly empowered, plus living in purpose, are some of the most successful companies that are out there. So the question for you, right below the matrix on page 10, is what quadrant do you think you're in? Yes, sir. So by invitation, invitation is how welcoming, how inviting you are. It's how well you interact with someone. So if you are, so in the cozy category, I categorize these as my cheerleaders. These are my rah-rah teams. High invitation, we want to have fun. Where do you think you fit in? Then last, where do you think your organization fits in? All right, on page 11, we flip it over. 5 questions are left. So answer this question. The leadership at my company empowers others by bringing high invitation and high challenge. Where does it rank? Then the next question. My team empowers others by high invitation and high challenge. And then the last question. I personally bring high invitation, high challenge. And then the last 2 questions are reflective. And as you think about everything from where we were today, how do you feel about the reality of your current organization? And then what can I do to be the catalyst of change? What can I do to empower others? And this is where I want you to get really specific. And the more specific you can be, flip this back over to page 1 and see where are your goals. From where your goals were this morning to where they are now, are they different? Are there things that you can do to make a positive impact in your own life, in somebody else's life? This is what the Prioritized Leader is all about. It's about how we, as future leaders, as aspiring leaders, can rise above ourselves and help and inspire others for a greater purpose. So does anybody want to share what is one thing that you can do? Anyone want to share? Yeah, go for it.
I can better engage each member of my team outside of stand-ups, outside of meetings, but check up on them. How are things going? In a closed environment, I'm more likely to get a candid response than in a team environment on a conference call.
Right. Excellent. Anyone else want to share? Yeah.
Definitely brought to light that I need to reduce context switching so that I can put more effort in the things that matter more than others. I really need to do that. It's hard.
Yes, it is hard. Excellent. Anyone else? Anybody in the back? I like calling on the back. You guys have been quiet back there in the corner. I'm not going to stop. No, I'm looking at you guys, calling you out now. He's been sharing. Anybody? No? If I come back over there, will you share? You can whisper it. No? Anybody else? So the whole point, the whole thing with the Prioritized Leader, it isn't necessarily about the return on quote-unquote investment. It's a return on value. It's the value that you place on yourself and the organization. And we heard a little bit about value yesterday and the return on value. This starts to drive home what is that true return on value from those two commercials that we just watched. It wasn't about how much the company invested in those commercials. It was the value that people got that brought clients, customers to them because it triggered their purpose, their vision, their values, extremely visual, extremely memorable. With Coca-Cola, their invitation and challenge to the people, to the friends, to others. Bringing those together brought an immense, that they didn't have to worry so much about their pace, they didn't have to worry about their perception. Those were all combined. Profits happened as a result. And that's what the Prioritized Leader is all about. It's not easy, it's hard. Hard things take time, but they're worth it. Any questions? None? Steve, that's not Steve Doyle. Steve.
So this kind of bases itself off of your initial premise, which was reorganizing the priorities, but companies are all about profit, and not all companies are software companies. So I find companies yourself software companies where there's already a community and it's sort of established patterns of having
Right.
I use software for internal use, so how do you try and convince people to follow through with what you're describing here when the main goal is something you want to say that it's not possible, because certainly some people think not, so how do you kind of reprioritize around other things than the project or the customer?
It all comes, for me personally, it all comes back down to values and vision. It truly comes back to what is the purpose of the organization. And if we can't clearly articulate the return on value, because value, there's a pro for doing it and there's a con for not doing it. And those have both positive and negative things. And I am so focused on return on value when I'm explaining this stuff to the executives. But again, it's sharing with them how we're actually going to do this. So that's how when I'm talking with them, that's what I'm really talking about, is the value of not doing versus the value of doing, the value of empowering your people, the value of challenging for innovation, for invitation. Those are the main things that I'm talking about. So it's very hard when you're talking to an executive, because I've been there, made these same pitches to my own team when I was in corporate, until you can clearly articulate and paint that crystal clear picture of what they're getting out of it and why they should invest in it, nobody does. You have to overcome that resistance to change because they've always done it a certain way. Well, we've always done it this way. We've always gotten the same results that we've always gotten, and we've always gotten the same margins that we've gotten. But if we want to change, we have to do things differently. And instead of focusing on the investment, we focus on the value. Yes, sir.
Do you think it's easier to execute all this like material and learnings in a smaller company versus a bigger one?
No, it's harder. The reason it's hard, so smaller and harder. So smaller companies are smaller for a reason. They're smaller because typically owners want to control things. Larger companies don't have the luxury of having to control everything. So when you're at a larger company, yes, you have the nuances with if you have siloed companies or you have a matrix company. They're all different. But how you do it and how you present it, you start small and you work big. So just like how you guys launch software, right? You're not going to launch enterprise-wide and everything's going to succeed. It's easier to launch small, like in a certain group, launch it, have some successful wins, go to scale it from there. That's what I have found to be the most successful when talking to companies about this. Anything else? No? You guys are good? Well, thank you guys. Thank you, everyone. And the last page, if you have time and you care to, this is how my wife pays me, this is my wife's the financial side, is there's a feedback form. If you don't mind filling that out and just leaving it on the table, I'd appreciate it. So thank you, everyone.